I don't think there were many black airmen in those days, and particularly black officers in the Royal Air Force. And I was in solitary confinement. After I'd been in solitary confinement for about 5 days, I was pulled out in the bright sunshine. A photograph was taken of me. I didn't know for what purpose. At the end of I was shot on in 43. At the end of 44, of course we were aware that the Russians were approaching. We could see refugees fleeing, the German refugees running, going north, south, east, west. As the Russians approached, we knew that soon we could be liberated. But then we were, in January 45, we were suddenly told that we were going to be evacuated, leave the camp. It was in the middle of winter. It was a severe winter. The roads were covered in snow, and, we marched for 5 or 6 days in the snow and stopping off in barns and things like that. It was really tough. And landed up in a place about 60 kilometers southeast of Berlin called Luckenwalde, which is a huge holding camp where thousands of prisoners of all ranks, and it was a really disgusting, flea-ridden, disgusting place with hardly any food. There were no Red Cross passes from. That was when it was terrible. Suddenly, from being this privileged place where we could read music, we had bands, we had sports events, we had a theater. We had everything that you could possibly have except a woman. Okay.
So really,
suddenly you got into a measly place which was filthy, bedridden with bugs, hardly any food, and the bombs were falling all along. We could hear the bombing because we were so close to Dresden, and Dresden, of course, was knocked out, and to Berlin, and we could hear the war happening outside. But we were aware that the two armies were coming together. The Russians were moving in from the east, and the Americans were coming up towards the Elbe. So it was an exciting time, at the same time a difficult time. And then one morning we woke up, and there were no guards. The Germans just disappeared.
They fled?
They fled because they know the Russians were there. And within a few hours, the Russians crashed into the camp.
What about the heating in camps? How did you guys keep warm?
Well, it was cold.
No heat?
No, we didn't have heat. I can't remember heat at all. We would have big old blankets, covered in blankets and lice, and I think itching kept you warm. When you lay in bed, you were itching so much. But there are lots of incidents. That part of the war was very horrible. So I can remember telling Kurt a bit about my experiences, and he was, but we never got around to this miserable part. And he was saying, gosh, that was a very privileged life because, our money was still going into the bank, our paychecks.
So when you guys are walking, being transported or just logged, you were walking in the cold, in the snow, no heat, just walking. So walking kept you warm? Walking.
And then at night we slept, if we go to a hay barn in a farm, we could bury ourselves in the snow. Some of the guys went and slept with the cows. The cows kept them warm.
And that for 6 or 7 days?
Yeah.
You walked?
No, on the walk, that was it. And then in the camp, I can't remember, we might have had some burning thing, but it was primitive.
So
but of course, there are lots of things I could tell. That part of it is full of incident.
Sure.
Because I was once sent out on a foraging party to go and bring back food. And there were like 6 of us in a truck, and we were taken out with a Russian guy going in this van. And we drove into the countryside, and we arrived at a farm, and it was all slushy from the mud still, and you could see dead bodies lying, and you had to walk over dead German and Russian people, and then told the captain. I thought when we set out that we were going to go and raid some German shop, that and steal, but found that we had to that we had to round up cattle. Now, how would I know how to catch a cow? I'll get it into it. Well, that was quite a story.
So
that was a story.
What's what happened?
Well, it's amazing how things happen. The first attempt is that my pilot, who is a Canadian guy, Al Angel, he didn't know anything about it. He got a big piece of wood, approached a cow, hit it on the head, the cow fell down. He took out his penknife, cut his throat, and that was even worse, because a cow is a heavy thing, and to drag a dead cow, poor truck into a truck, that was impossible. But eventually, somebody had the idea, well, why don't we get a halter? So we went to the farmer, reluctantly got a halter, captured the cows, and made a ramp, and caught about 6 or 7 cows, and went into it. But we had to go into the same back of the truck with these cows, and the cows are petrified now. And I can remember sitting right at the end of the truck, and the tail of a cow was waving over my head, and the power was petrified, and suddenly I got a blessing, which was the most disgusting state of affairs. Can you imagine being shat on your head?